Okay. So we had studied what? Take out your books. We were talking about what? We were talking about tissues and which type of tissues. I think we had already finished with nervous tissues. Take out your notebooks. Take out your notebooks. Let's see what type of tissues we have finished. Let's see what type of tissues. Take out your notebook. The other day, what did I do? You were not there in the other class. Were you there the last lecture? You were not there. So we had, I think, finished with for animal tissues. No, we had started with plant tissues. We started with plant tissues, and we are already this one. Fundamental unit of life is already over. I'm doing tissues now. This one. Tissues already we have completed with. Meristematic tissues we are already done. We are studying plant tissues. We are studying plant tissues. Under the concept of plant tissues, meristematic tissues, we are done. Meristematic tissues, we had discussed already yesterday, the other day. Then permanent tissues, we had studied. Permanent tissues are of two types. What are the two types of permanent tissues? Simple and complex. And when I talk about simple, there are three types of simple tissues. There are three types of simple tissues. So when we are talking about simple tissues, out of the types of simple tissues, what is the meaning of simple tissues? Remember, simple tissues, they are made up of only one type of cells. This is what we had already finished the other day, but I'm just taking a minute of revision for the terms. Simple tissues, they are made up of one type of cells. And which are those type of tissues? The type of tissues are parenchyma. We had discussed this. I drew the diagram. I explained with the diagram the other day. Parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. So this is what we had finished the other day. We are going to start with the complex tissues today. We are going to start with complex tissues today. And what is the basic concept of complex tissues? They are made up of complex tissues made up of two or more types of cells. Made up of two or more types of cells. Complex tissues made up of two or more types of cells. Complex tissues made up of two or more types of cells. What are the types of complex tissues we are going to study? Xylem and phloem. Xylem and phloem. This is what we are going to study. Complex tissues, xylem and phloem. Complex tissues, xylem and phloem. So now that we talk about xylem and phloem, let us start with xylem. Now, when we talk about xylem, how would the cells of xylem appear? If I look into the cells of xylem, first of all, to understand what are their cell types known as? What are the cell types known as when we talk about the xylem? It is a type of complex tissues I'm talking about. That means I just now told you that this is a type of a tissue which will have more than one type of cell. They will have more than one type of cell. So when I understand that they will have more than one type of cell, so here we are to come across, unlike the parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, they may be made up of 2-3 different types of cells. What are the different types of cells? One is known as trachees. One is known as vessels. One is known as xylem parenchyma. One is known as xylem parenchyma. One is known as xylem fibers. One is known as xylem fibers. So we are saying that these are complex tissues. So obviously now these are made up of 4 different types of cells. What are the 4 different types of cells? Tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers. Tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers. Now that we talk about the tracheids, vessels, these 2 type of cells are mainly involved in the conduction of water and minerals. The conduction of water and minerals. So when we are talking about what are the functions of each of these cells? The functions of each of these cells, you have to remember the function of each of these cells. If I have to mention, tracheids and vessels are basically meant for conduction of the water and minerals. These are the main type of cells, if I say. Tracheids and vessels, remember these are the main type of cells of the xylem. These are the main type of cells of the xylem which are meant for the passage functions, the conduction functions. Next one, I talk about the parenchyma. This type of xylem cells or the parenchyma cells, these are majorly meant for support. Fibers majorly meant for support and protection. So now when I talk about that the xylem cells majorly are what? Tracheids, fibers, xylem parenchyma, xylem fibers, 4 types of cells. Out of these, when I talk about permanent tissues, what was one basic concept to remember? The moment I talk about permanent tissues, what did I discuss the other day? If it is a permanent tissue, what would be the nature of the cells? The cells have lost the power of division. The cells have lost the power of division. One major difference between meristematic cells and permanent tissue cells are permanent tissue cells have lost the power of division. Are they fast dividing cells? Not at all. Meristematic is the fast dividing. Parenchyma cells, collenchyma cells, sclerenchyma that we discussed the other day. Parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, we have it. Okay. So since I started with complex, I'll complete with this and I go to that. So now that I talk about the complex tissues made up of 2 or more types of cells, tracheids, vessels, parenchyma, fibers. Major type of cells which are involved in the conduction of the water minerals, tracheids and vessels. I said that if this is a permanent tissue cell I'm talking about, that they would generally not be fast dividing. These type of cells, if it is a permanent tissue cell, always remember, will they have the property of division and growth? No, they are dead cells basically. But out of those group of cells also, some of the cells may have certain property of little bit of growth. So that's how we are saying that these type of cells, that is the parenchyma cells, these are the living cells. Which type of cells of the xylem are living cells? Parenchyma. Then what about the rest? Tracheids, vessels, fibers, they are all dead cells. Name the living component of the xylem. Which one to write? Xylem parenchyma is a living component, living cell. Rest all the 3 are dead cells. So what is the overall function of the xylem? What is the overall function? We are talking about the xylem. So what are you supposed to write? Function of the xylem when asked. Function of the xylem, what is it? It helps in the transport of water, minerals. It helps in the transport of water and minerals in one direction or in upward direction. Transport of water and minerals always in upward direction. Always in upward direction. Okay, the transport of the water minerals always in upward direction. So now that we are talking about the basic function of the xylem, at the same time, whenever we talk about that, these xylem cells, what happens when they are older? These xylem cells, when they become old, are they still involved in the process of conduction of the water minerals? No. Now they are not involved in the process of conduction of the water mineral, they form the woody part of the plant. They form the woody part of the plant. They form the woody part of the plant. So that is what we understand.
And the xylem fibers protect them.
Protection. Xylem fibers are protecting the entire xylem tube of cells. Protection. Get to know that whenever I'm talking about the xylem tubes are an arrangement. I may talk about the stem like this. And in the center, there is an arrangement of some tube-like cells. There is an arrangement of some tube-like cells. There will be some cells like this, spindle shape, some cells like this spindle shape, some cells like this spindle shape, some cells like this. This is one type of a cell. This is one type of a cell. Then surrounding them, there will be some cells which are known as the parenchymal cells. Then there will be some arrangement of cells like this, spirally arranged tube-like structures which are known as the vessels. These are trachees. And they have got some pores in them through which the conduction happens. Then again the parenchyma. Then again the parenchyma on either side. Now that I'm just drawing the lines, which are nothing but a group of cells, cellular arrangement it is. It is a cellular arrangement also. And following this, there will be some fibrous tissues known as the xylem fibers. So this is the entire tube-like structure which forms the xylem. So when I talk about the xylem, though we say that the xylem is nothing but a tube-like arrangement, right, start from the root, stem, branches, etc. But it is actually a tubular arrangement. Check for some diagrams in the volume. Also, we have given some diagrams. Individual cell types are mentioned. Could you see that? Individual cell types, separately, individual cell types. But they are not separate like this. They all are clubbed together to form a tissue. How would be a tissue? All put together in a bundle. So exactly the same way, different type of cells are here when I talk about the xylem. Different type of cells are here when I talk about the xylem, and ultimately now they result in the formation of a tissue. But now since they have got different type of cells, are we going to talk about them as a very simple type of a tissue? No, these are complex tissues. Complex tissues. Okay. So remember, what is the function of the old xylem? Are they engaged in the process of conduction of the water minerals? No, they form the woody part of the plant. Meaning, these old xylem cells will start moving towards the bark, and the meristematic cells. So now these the old xylem cells, they start migrating, and the new layers of cells develop which take up the central position. Then from where are those new layers of cells developing? They are the meristematic cells which are growing. So that is what we say, it forms the woody part of the stem, woody part of the plant. We talk about the phloem parallelly, try to understand what are some of the similarities, differences. So now I talk about the phloem. Another type of complex permanent tissue. What are they made up of? They are made up of cells known as sieve tubes. They are made up of cells known as sieve tubes. They are made up of cells known as companion cells. They are made up of cells known as sieve tubes, companion cells. They are made up of sieve tubes, companion cells. They are made up of phloem parenchyma. They are made up of phloem parenchyma. They are made up of phloem parenchyma. They are made up of phloem fibers. They are made up of phloem fibers. So now that I talk about out of these cells of the phloem, which are some of the cells which basically help in the transport. So when I understand that the phloem cells, these sieve tubes, companion cells, and the parenchyma, these are basically the living cells of the phloem, and this is the dead cell of the phloem. And these are the cells which are involved in majorly the conduction of the soluble food. Majorly the conduction of the soluble food. But if I talk about the parenchyma also helps in the storage. It also helps in the storage of starch, also helps in the storage of the storage functions. Parenchyma. The function of the fiber more or less remains the same. Overall function of the phloem, what to write? Overall function of the phloem, what to write? Transport of soluble food. transport of soluble food from the leaves. Transport of soluble food from the leaves. Why do I say from the leaves? Because the food is formed in the leaves by the process known as photosynthesis. Transport of soluble food from the leaves. Transport of soluble food from leaves to all parts of the plant. To all parts of the plant. To all parts of the plant. Transport of soluble food from leaves to all parts of the plant. That is what we understand as a function of the phloem. Now next is, we have to now go back to the concept of simple tissues, if you have not finished that. Simple tissues. Now let us look into simple tissues. Let us look into simple tissues and try to understand their differences with respect to their diagrams also. Did we do this earlier?
No.
Yeah, come on. You'll have to draw the diagrams also along with me. Rough diagram you have to draw.
This is for xylem.
This is for parenchyma that I am drawing. I am talking about simple tissues now. I am talking about simple tissues now. What are the three types of simple tissues? Three types of simple tissues would be parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. So we are going to study that. Simple tissues. We are going to study types of simple tissues. The first type of simple tissue that we are going to talk about would be parenchyma. What is parenchyma? Where are they present? What are some of their features? Let us learn. Parenchyma would generally be present, or parenchyma would generally form the bulk of the plant. The entire part of the plant, whether it is the fruit or the leaf or the stem or the root, the bulk of the plant is all the parenchymatous tissues. The plant is majorly made up of parenchyma. That's why we say parenchyma forms the bulk of the plant. We say parenchyma forms the bulk of the plant. What is the meaning? Parenchyma majorly forms the different parts of the plant. So it is the parenchyma which forms the different parts of the plant. So we learn that what would be some of the major features of the parenchyma. You are supposed to understand the location function of parenchyma basically. So when we are talking about what about some cellular nature of the parenchyma? What are the major features of the cells? Cells are always compact. No intercellular spaces at all. Cells are compact. No intercellular spaces. That is one feature of the parenchyma always. Cells are compact. No intercellular spaces. What about the cell wall? The cell wall is basically thin and made up of cellulose.
So like there are different types of
The
cell
cell
walls.
wall that you get to see, the cell wall is thin always comparative. The cell wall will be evenly thin. And what is the cell wall made up of? The cell wall is always made up of a typical type of a plant cell, cellulose. Cell wall is made up of cellulose. Then any other specialized feature? They have got large vacuole. They have got large vacuole. What about their location? What about their location if I have to mention? Their location, if I talk about the parenchyma, location would be, I would understand they would be present in the stem, they would be present in the root, they would be present in the leaves. Then they would be forming the fruit. They would be forming the fruit. The fruit, the pulp of the mango that you eat, that is parenchyma. The potato that you eat is parenchyma. The beetroot that you eat is parenchyma. The carrot that you eat is parenchyma.
What has he written after
Stem, large vacuole.
about that?
Cell wall thin. So we are talking about what are some of the features, the location, stem, root, leaves. You may say that it forms the fruits, it forms the seeds, etc. Parenchyma. Potato, very good example of parenchyma, beetroot, carrot, very good example, stem, root, all these are examples of parenchyma. Function, what would be some of the major functions of the parenchyma? What does the parenchyma do in a plant? Support to the different tissues, other tissues also. And also very much storage of starch, storage of the food, a major function of the parenchyma also. Now, certain types of parenchyma or parenchyma in certain regions can have certain modifications. Parenchyma in certain regions can have modifications. Which are those modifications? I talk about chlorenchyma, a type of parenchyma, a modification of parenchyma. I talk about chlorenchyma. Then what is the location of such type of parenchyma? They are present in the leaves. What is so special in them? They contain a large number of chloroplasts. They contain large number of chloroplasts. Now, if they contain large number of chloroplasts, then what will be their special function? They will be able to undergo photosynthesis also. So now that I'm talking about chlorenchyma, what is their specific function then? Chlorenchyma, they are able to undergo photosynthesis. So where are they basically present? Remember, in the leaves. The leaf cells have got parenchyma. Now we will call them as chlorenchyma majorly. We will call them as chlorenchyma majorly. Chlorenchyma. Something more, when we talk about the modification of parenchyma, we have to talk about one more. So when I talk about the modification of parenchyma, there is one more modification to understand. What is the other modification? The other modification we talk about is arenchyma. Arenchyma. Where are they present? Location. Arenchyma. Where would they be present? They are present in aquatic plants, cells of aquatic plants. So now that I talk about the stem of the aquatic plants, the leaves of the aquatic plants. So when I talk about the location of the arenchyma, where do we find arenchyma? They are found in the leaves and the stem and the roots of the aquatic plants. What would be their function? what would be their function? Their function would be provide buoyancy to the plant parts. Provide buoyancy to the plant parts. What is the meaning? Provide buoyancy to the plant parts. Why? Because the vacuole is air-filled. Because vacuole is air-filled. If I talk about the lotus plant, the water lily, the hyacinth, etc., what happens? These plants are having roots and stem and the leaves much lighter than the mango and the people and the ashoka. Why? Because if I talk about the mango leaves, the individual cells have got sap filled in it. So the mango leaf is heavier. I compare the mango and the lotus leaf. Which one is heavier? The mango. Because every cell of the mango leaf has the water known as a sap filled in it. So it is heavier. Comparatively, when I talk about the lotus leaves, which may look bigger, but they are lighter because in each of those cells, it is just air filled. They don't have the sap inside. So individual cells are in fact empty to say, air filled. And that is what is making the plant parts lighter so that they can float. Buoyancy. B-U-O-Y-A-N-C-Y. What is the meaning of buoyancy? Allowing or the property by which the particular structures would float on the surface of the water. Not sink, float on the surface of the water. So provides certain feature making the plant parts lighter so that they can float on the surface of the water. But what is the reason? Because the cells are air filled, not filled by the sap. So what are the two modifications of parenchyma we had talked about? Chlorenchyma and parenchyma. Now we talk about the second type. I talk about the second type of simple tissues. What is it? Collenchyma. Collenchyma. What would be the difference in the diagram to make? The difference in the diagram would be just little bit, not much. The difference in the diagram would be just little bit to understand. Where the diagrams would generally show something like this. Where the diagram would generally show something like this. Now, are there any spaces between the cells? Yes. Now there are. So that is one major difference when I have to talk about the collenchyma and the sections of the parenchyma. But now, I said already that if it is the parenchyma, the cell wall is thin and all made up of cellulose. Here, of course, the cell wall is thin, but the cell wall at the corners are thick like this due to extra deposits of cellulose. There is an extra deposit of cellulose at the corners of every cell. At the corners of every cell, there is an extra deposit of cellulose. So there's an extra deposit of cellulose at the corners. Then how is the cell benefited, plant part benefited? The plant part becomes flexible and elastic because of that. So when I say elastic, of course, we are not talking about that degree of elasticity, but yes, plant parts do have a degree of flexibility. Whenever we see that now that it is a little bit stormy and windy, some leaves which are falling are majorly the dead leaves. The fresh leaves, are they falling down? No. They are shaking, but they would not fall immediately. Flexibility to the plant parts. I talk about the flower. I talk about pulling the branches, plucking flowers, leave them. Pulling the branches, plucking fruits, leave them. The branches immediately they don't break. I talk about hanging on the branch of a tree. Small kids do that, no? Did you ever try? Never you tried? You tried? So hanging on the branch of a tree, playing, when we go to our grandmother's house, often as children, I think we have always done. You also must have done. So now that we talk about that hanging on the branch of a tree, small children always they play. No, that easily that doesn't break. What are some of the features of collenchyma to understand? Collenchyma, intercellular spaces present. Intercellular spaces present. Intercellular spaces present. Intercellular spaces are always present there. Intercellular spaces are always present there. Intercellular spaces present. Next is what? Next is we would understand apart from the intercellular spaces present, what happens? Cell wall is thin, extra deposits of cellulose. Extra deposits of cellulose at the corners. Extra deposit of cellulose at the corners. Where are they present? Location. What to write? Location. Where are they present? Collenchyma. The stalk of flower. The pedestal of the leaves. The leaf, I'm sorry, the leaf stalk, I'm sorry, the leaf stalk, and pedestal of the flowers. Leaf stalk, pedestal of flowers, branches at the junction of the branch and the stem. At the junction of the branch and the stem, they are present. Function. Function. Provide flexibility. Provide flexibility to plant parts. Provide flexibility to the plant parts so that the plant parts can take a little bit of a stress, excessive pulling. They can handle. The third type of permanent tissues but simple that I talk about. What is it? Sclerenchyma. Here, the cell types are a bit different. The cell type would be something like this, spindle shaped. The cell types are something like this. They are majorly spindle shaped. The cells are like this. Individual cells are like this when we talk about the sclerenchyma. But then the cell wall is excessively thick now. The cell wall is excessively thick like this. And on top of that, there are certain openings this way. And on top of that, there are certain openings this way. So what is the cell wall known as? The cell wall is known as lignified cell wall. Because now the cell wall is not just made up of cellulose. What about this empty space known as? It is known as the lumen. What about these openings known as? These are known as the pits. Sclerenchyma, what about some of the specialized features of the cells? Cells are spindle shaped basically. Cells are spindle shaped. Cell wall thick, made up of not cellulose but a tough substance known as lignin. Cells not made up of cellulose anymore. That's why I write lignified cell wall. Cells. So we are talking about the cells here.
What is lignin?
Lignin is another type of a tough sugar. More tougher, harder than cellulose. We talk about now the location. Where are they present? Sclerenchyma. This generally from the dead parts of the plant. Where? The bark of the stem. The bark of the stem. The veins of the leaf. Bark of the stem, veins of the leaf. Wherein we talk about the husk of the coconut. Then husk means those ropey parts of the coconut outer shell. Then we talk about the seed coat. All sclerenchyma. Remember, any dead part of the plant you can name. Function, protection. Protection against the entry of pathogens or unwanted substances. pathogens or unwanted substances into the plant tissues. Into the plant tissues. So today we are talking about what? We are talking about the permanent tissues, and I said that the permanent tissues can be of two. Yes, sir. I said thick cell wall is thick, made up of lignin, Lignin. Lignin. So now that I talk about that, what are the three types of simple permanent tissues? The three types of simple permanent tissues are parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Now, these parenchyma and the collenchyma that I draw, am I drawing three types of cells? The xylem that I drew, I had been drawing 4 types of cells there. Some were long, tube-like, some were spiral, some were the basic rectangular cells like that, some are fibrous cells like that. So here, when I talk about collenchyma, parenchyma, they are all made up of one type of cell, hence they are simple. So what did we learn so far? We are talking about simple permanent and complex permanent. What are the three types of simple permanent?
Simple permanent is parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma.
What are the two modifications of parenchyma?
Parenchyma and chloronchyma.
Chlorenchyma. What is the basic difference between collenchyma and chlorenchyma?
Collenchyma can do photosynthesis, whereas parenchyma is present.
Oh, chlorenchyma and collenchyma.
Difference.
This is a very common question you get in your paper. Collenchyma is a type of simple tissue, simple permanent tissue. Chlorenchyma is a modification of parenchyma. But we'll have to do that question. Differences, many are there in the volume also we have given. You will read. Let us do at least 1, 2 so you get an idea what type of questions to prepare for.
We got the syllabus of
Tell me what it is.
It's the first chapter.
not first chapter. We don't have follow the first chapter and the class.
Till class 6. That means plant cells full. So first chapter full. Only maybe membrane permeability is not there. Membrane permeability is not there. So the next class I'm going to take a short class test then. What about yours?
And just the one chapter.
First chapter. What about yours? First full chapter. What about you? Which school? You also Ryan. Acha, you are done. Amrita, and you? All 4 different schools. Okay.
There is one here who is like in the same.
Ma'am, we have Telecro,
That means membrane permeability is not there. Otherwise, the entire chapter is there. And for you, portion
my entire chapter is.
Yay! For you, entire chapter is there. So nice, very good. Study hard. Entire chapter is there. Your exam starts from? Hota?
No, for Buddha it's from July. July 13th.
Oh, you are Hota. For you, it's August. So July no exam. Very okay, no? So nice.
Ma'am, I have done my exam. This one.
This exam.
Fundamental.
When?
Now.
Last
Friday.
Last Friday or next Friday?
His exam.
Last
How many
Friday.
days exam going on?
It is over.
Exam is over.
And last Friday there was science paper.
How did you do?
Paper
How did you do?
in likes.
Very nice. Then they are marks also. Let us write one question. Write 2 differences between chlorenchyma and collenchyma. 2 differences between collenchyma, chlorenchyma. Two differences between collenchyma and chlorenchyma. Write down 2 differences between collenchyma, chlorenchyma. Make a table fast. Make a table, chlorenchyma, collenchyma. Collenchyma, under
In my
collenchyma
exam, it was there. Only half chapter was there. Of my exam, biology,
of what? Half chapter of which one?
fundamental.
So
Ma'am, what that should be?
you should have done it very good.
That should be
Half chapter.
Chlorine-chyma and collenchyma,
And
right?
then half chapter will come in. Full chapter will come in August.
Skip study. Collenchyma and chlorine-chyma. Under collenchyma, right? Under collenchyma, right? It is a simple permanent tissue. It is a simple permanent tissue. This is the box that is made. See the box that is made. It's neither pentagon nor hexagon, nothing. Collenchyma, right first. Table you make it at home later. Collenchyma, it is a simple permanent tissue. Simple permanent tissue. Chlorine-chyma, under chlorine-chyma, it is a modification of parenchyma. It is a modification of parenchyma.
but then it's also simple tissue, right?
Simple permanent tissue, but it is a modified form. Modified parenchyma.
Collenchyma is a modified
Parenchyma containing large number of chloroplasts. Containing large number of chloroplasts. Number 2 for collenchyma. Collenchyma present at the leaf stalk, junction of stem and branch. Present at the leaf stalk, junction of stem and branch, etc. Present at the leaf stalk, junction of stem and branch, etc. Chlorine-chyma. Chlorine-chyma present only in the photosynthetic cells. Present only in the photosynthetic cells of leaves and stem. Leaves and
You know,
photosynthetic cells of leaves and young green stem. Leaves and photosynthetic cells of leaves and young green stem. Number 3, function. Third point, we'll write about the function. Number 3,
photosynthetic and green cells.
present in photosynthetic cells of the leaves and young green stem. Photosynthetic cells of leaves and young green stem. There are names to those cells, but I'm not using those names. You just write general now. Third point, collenchyma provides flexibility to the plant parts. Flexibility to plant parts and chlorine-chyma
Collenchyma provides flexibility
to plant parts. Wherever they are present, flexibility to plant parts. And chlorine-chyma prepare food. Prepare food. Prepare food. So now, if I talk about, these are the basic plant tissues we have been talking about. Now we talk about some specialized types of tissues. What are the specialized types of tissues that we'll have to talk about? Number 1 is, we will talk about the epidermis. Number 1, we talk about the epidermis. Now, where is the epidermis present? What does it do? I talk about a particular leaf now. I talk about a particular leaf. This leaf, find out a section of this. How would this appear? The leaf would be known to have various layers of cells like this. The leaf would be known to have various layers of cells like this. The leaf would be known to have various layers of cells like this. many layers of cells like this. The leaf would be known to have many cellular layers. And at the end, again we talk about the layers of epidermis being present. Again we talk about the layers of epidermis being present. Now I'm talking about only the uppermost layer. What is this uppermost layer known as? This uppermost layer is known as epidermis. This uppermost layer is known as the epidermis. And this uppermost layer known as epidermis produces some waxy substance. What is this waxy substance known as? This waxy substance is known as the cuticle. So what is this epidermis producing? Where is it present? The epidermis is present on the upper and lower surface of leaves. It is present on the upper and lower surfaces of leaves. That is its location. Where is this epidermis present? On the upper and the lower surfaces of the leaves. What is it doing? What is its function? Produces a waxy substance. Produces a waxy substance known as cuticle. Produces a waxy substance known as cuticle that prevents the water loss by evaporation. That prevents the water loss by evaporation. So that is the major function of this epidermis. That is the major function of the epidermis. What is this epidermis doing? It is the outermost layer of the leaf, upper, lower, both. And this uppermost and the lowermost layer, the secretion of the cuticle is more on the uppermost layer. So did you ever see the shine that is there on the leaf of the mangoes? And is the shine the same in the leaf of the tulsi, mint? No. So I talk about in the aloe vera, the shine is more. I talk about in the mango, the shine is more. I talk about the money plant, the shine is more. Meaning the leaves where the shine is more, the waxy coat is thicker. The waxy coat is thicker and the water is conserved. The water cannot get lost. So what is the major function? The water from these plants, can they get lost? No, they are conserved. They cannot get lost. But yes, minimal loss does happen, but not that too much. What is the function that you have to write? Prevents the loss of water by evaporation. Here we are still talking about some other specialized types of tissues and structures that the plant has. And another one is stomata. Where is the stomata present? I may understand that these stomata are majorly present where? The stomata are majorly present somewhere here. The stomata are majorly present somewhere here. Majorly on the lower surface of the leaf. So now, if I talk about the stomata are majorly present in the lower epidermis. What is this layer of cells? This is also epidermis. What is this layer of cells? This is also epidermis. So in the lower epidermis, specialized pores are known as stomata. What are stomata? Stomata are specialized pores. Stomata are specialized pores or openings. They are specialized pores or openings on the lower surface of leaves. On the lower surface of leaves. So now that we are talking about stomata, what is stomata? These are specialized pores on the lower surface of the leaves. What are their cells known as? How would this stomata actually look like? If you have to draw the detailed structure of the stomata, how would this stomata look like? They are just made up of two bean-shaped cells like this. So what are these bean-shaped cells known as? These are known as the guard cells. What are guard cells? These are the cells of the stomata. So what does the stomata consist of? Cells known as the stomata. Cells of the stomata, what are they known as? The guard cells. And the opening known as stoma or stomatal opening. Stoma or stomatal opening. So what are the parts of a stomata? The stomata will have cells known as the guard cells, bean-shaped cells. And between the bean-shaped cells, there would be a small opening known as the stoma or the stomatal opening. What would be the function of this stomata? Number one, exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, or if I write specific, what is the job of the stomata? The inward diffusion of carbon dioxide, inward diffusion of carbon dioxide during photosynthesis, and the outward movement of oxygen, meaning the carbon dioxide moves from the atmosphere towards the flea, and the oxygen is coming from the stomata to the atmosphere. The direction of movement of the carbon dioxide and the oxygen is just the opposite. Is there any other major function of the stomata to talk about? Yes. Release of water in the form of vapor. Release of water in the form of vapor during transpiration. Release of water in the form of vapor during transpiration. So that is also another specialized function of the stomata, the release of water in the form of vapor during transpiration. Okay. So these are the specialized types of tissues that we have to talk about. We had been talking about the simple tissues known as, parenchyma, parenchyma, sclerenchyma. Complex tissues known as xylem, phloem, their function, cell type, all you have to come across. And some specialized tissues and parts that the plant possesses, that is the epidermis and the stomata. The basic two functions of the stomata you should always remember. Give it the volume there. Look into some questions. Let us see some questions from that part. Now, look into page number 113. Look into page number 113. Year 15, 16, can you see there? Year 15, 16, did you see? Page number 113, year 15, 16 is there. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. You will do it in the volume itself. Number 5 in the volume. Number 5 in the volume. Number 8 in the volume. Number 8 in the volume. Oh no, I'm sorry. Number 8 has animal tissues. I'm sorry. We'll do this later. Number 8 will do later. Number 8 will do later. Number 10B. Number 10B. Number 10B. That's it. These questions you will do as homework. These questions should be written down neatly in the notebook, question and answer. You may start now. Of course, you will not be able to finish. The rest you will carry over as homework. Come on, get started. Let's start it. Whatever you can finish, the better. Tired?
Write answers.
No, you will write question and ask. Later those answers you don't even understand which question, what answer, and then you just leave out. It's of no meaning answering them this way. The diagram based question you will not write in the notebook, you will just answer in the volume.
We didn't do the second question. State the location of apical meristem.
Location. Why we haven't done? Meristematic tissue. Did I take the other day?
Yeah, but then you just gave us that cells are fast dividing, no intercellular spaces, cells in growth, cells are small, and cell wall is thin.
Meristematic tissue, the three types we haven't studied? No? Meristematic tissues, which are the three types? What are you saying we haven't studied? Meristematic tissues, what are the three types?
Apical, then that.
I remember I drew the diagram. If I talk about the meristematic tissues, this is a shoot I draw. The meristematic tissues we will understand. This is the branch of a stem developing, branch of a stem coming up. This is the branch of a stem coming up. And this is the branch of a stem coming up. Now, we haven't done. Okay, so now if I'm talking about any particular tissue, what are the three types of meristematic tissues? Some tissues present at the tip. We will talk about this as apical meristems. These are known as apical meristems. Excuse me. This is known as apical meristem. Some type of meristems here on the inner side of the bark, we will term them as lateral meristems. This is known as lateral meristem. Some type of tissue is present exactly here. Some type of tissue is present exactly at the junction of the branch and the stem. Branch and the stem. What are these called? These are called intercalary meristems. Intercalary meristems. So apical meristems, what is the location? They are present in the root and shoot tip. At the extreme ends, what would they generally help in? Making the plant taller and root longer. So we say primary growth, increase in height and length. Lateral meristems, location, inner region of the bark, inner region of bark in the deeper parts of the stem. Inner region of the bark, deeper parts of the stem. What will these tissues help in? Increase the diameter of the stem, increase the girth. Increase the girth. In the girth increase of stem, diameter. Intercalary, where are they present? At the nodes of the stem from where the branches develop. Growing ends, nodes of the stem. What would they generally help in? Secondary growth of the plant. They would generally help in secondary growth of the plant. What is meant by secondary growth? Secondary growth means from a branch giving rise to, from a stem giving rise to branches. From a branch again giving rise to the flower, if I say. This is also secondary growth. Which type of tissues here? Intercalary. Understood? So for meristematic, only this you have to study. The three types of meristematic tissues. One point about their location, one point about their function. Only that much. I thought we have finished this.
Primary growth.
Primary growth means increase in the height of the shoot and increase in the length of the root. That is known as primary growth. Secondary growth means making the plant branchy. The development of the branches and the flowers and the fruits. No? Are we talking about only the growth? No. Secondary growth coming up. That is called secondary growth. Okay? Go through this part of the chapter. Tell me if there's anything doubtful the next class. And then we'll continue again with the next part of the chapter.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Silly question.
दिखा दे भाई.
Question number 2.
क्या आया नहीं आ रहा तेरे को?
आया. Question number 1 में आया. तो मैं इसे मत कॉपी कर, मैंने अपना खुद की लॉजिक लगा के आंसर.
छोड़ी.
Question number 1 बहुत easy है.
तूने किया ना थोड़ा सा.
हाँ?
थोड़ा सा तो किया है ना.
नहीं.
फिर?
मैं ऐसे ही देख रहा था उसका चेहरा. अरे
भाई इसकी ये सटकी हुई है क्या? सुबह सुबह आपकी सुबह सुबह अच्छा दिन नहीं चीज अलग रखी होती है क्या इसकी SPD शेवपुरी दहीपुरी
तू पकड़ी है फनी भाई कितना लिखा दिया ये देख एक दो तीन
पता है 3 छात्र से
मैंने पता है और हर एक